Hey, groovy cats and chicks, welcome to the show that never ends, the Rock Sabbath Show, alive on SoundCloud. And tribute to the filmmaker who inspired me to make movies. And no, it wasn't no damn Steven Spielberg or Slemilberg, whatever. It was no damn George Lucas or any crappy fool from Hollywood. No, it was an independent B-movie, underground filmmaker, outsider, whatever you want to call him, the great, the powerful Herschell Gordon Lewis, and his incredible and amazing partner, David Friedman. These guys got me interested in making independent films, more so than George Romero. I heard about George Romero too. He didn't do much to impress me. Night of the Living Dead was a good movie, but it wasn't in color and it wasn't gruesome enough for my taste. John Waters, I didn't find out until I went to college, but I heard of Herschell Gordon Lewis when I was in high school. I read about him in two different sources. Read about him in the now defunct, but very great monster newspaper, a horror newspaper called the Monster Times, which was literally like a newspaper. And it was a big interview with him. Then they did an interview with him in Fangoria with an update, and that was great too. So what can I tell you? And I became a big fan of his because he made all his movies out of Florida, made a few in Chicago. Didn't have anything to do with Hollywood. And I liked that. I said, this is great. I could make movies from Maryland. I didn't know about Don Dohler or John Waters at the time. You know, when I was in high school, didn't hear about them until I went to college and said, oh, great. Now I know I can make films in Maryland because we've got these two guys doing it. And I have a feeling John Waters and Don Dohler probably never met. I know Joe Stover met both of these guys. But so I was like, okay, this is great, you know. So I want to make movies, and I saw the pictures from his outrageously gruesome movies. I said, I got to be like Herschell Gordon Lewis, but I'm not like Herschell Gordon Lewis. I'm like Rock Savage. I developed my own style because I have my own quirky personality. But I thought it was great to read about Herschell, and he was a big inspiration. I love his movies. I think they're in a class all by themselves. I love Dave's movies too. David Friedman was his partner. And some people say, Rock, why didn't you do a tribute to Herschell Gordon Lewis sooner? And why didn't you do a YouTube video of that? Well, there's a sad reason for that. When Herschell Gordon Lewis passed away, he passed away in 2016. And the week that Herschell passed away, he passed away 2 days before my wife passed away. My wife passed away 2 days after Herschell Gordon Lewis. So that was a pretty rough week. I lost my idol, which should not have been that big a shock because the man was in his 90s. I think he was 90 years old. And unfortunately, you know, when you get to be that old, your body starts to fall apart. Everybody talks about the amazing human body, and ain't that amazing to me. It falls apart, you lose your hair, you lose bone density, you lose a lot of crap. Well, you know, you take vitamins, you can put it off for a while, as long as you can, but, you know. Fortunately, Herschell passed away in his sleep, as did my late wife, who had 2 days after Herschell passed away, she had a stroke in her sleep. So that was a pretty grim time for me. So really, as much as I like Herschell and the fact that he was my idol, kind of prevented, you know, dealing with my late wife, you know, dealing with her passing was such a blow to me that I didn't feel like doing anything else for a while, as you can imagine. So, you know, but now it's 2018, and I said, you know, I never talked about, I mean, I wrote an article for Count Gordevaux's website a long time ago on meeting Herschell and Dave, and this is when they were both still alive. Because I always thought you should appreciate and do tribute to people when they're alive and not wait until they're dead like they do at the Oscars when they say, oh, we never gave this person an Oscar. He's got 1 foot in the grave or 2 feet in the grave. Let's give him an Oscar for this crappy movie they just made, even though it doesn't deserve one, just because we overlooked them every other time. So that's a bunch of bullshit. But no, I did write a tribute article to about both of them on the Count Gore's website. However, I didn't get to do a video, but nevertheless, I am going to do this podcast because that's what I'm doing the most these days. I will go back to making YouTube videos soon, but right now, this setup is so much easier, quicker, because I've been real busy working on my other projects, which you will know about them as we progress. And since I am trying to do a podcast each week, you will be hearing more about my film adventures that are coming up. But let's talk about Herschell. Herschell Gordon Lewis, for those of you who don't know, in the early 60s was making what they call nudie cuties. Now, Herschell is a true Renaissance man. He's smarter than any of these film directors they got in Hollywood, and more talented, too. Now, you could say, oh, Rocky, but his movies, they're on such a low budget, and the effects, well, you know what? Herschell invented a lot of the special effects he had to use because nobody had the latex and rubber arms yet. Those weren't invented yet. He had to take mannequin arms and get some special effects guys, some magicians, to make them look more real. So, Herschell learned from magicians, from stage magicians that actually did gore. There were things called spook shows that went on from the 30s, 40s, and 50s, and these guys knew how to do some gory effects, and Herschell learned from them because he studied everything. I mean, Herschell was a studying man, and he was, by the way, to give you an idea what a Renaissance man Herschell Gordon Lewis was, he majored in business and he minored in music. He composed the music for most of his films. Herschell Gordon Lewis also was an English literature teacher. That's right, he was a college professor of English literature. And like I said, he composed music for his own movies. Herschell was also had several degrees. He had a business degree, and I'm trying to think what other degrees he had, but I know he had one in psychology. That's interesting right there. And the great Herschell Gordon Lewis also owned his own advertising agency, and he had studied how to make films. He knew how to make industrial films, and he did industrial films for his clients. So as a matter of fact, on one of the DVDs, I think the one for Blood Feast, they got an industrial or an instructional film in there. He did a few educational films. So there you go, and it's absolutely amazing. This man is the amazing Herschell Gordon Lewis. Like I said, an incredible Renaissance man. Also wrote several books on advertising and promoting your business. So very, I think he was working all the way up to the end of his life. I don't think he ever stopped working or stopped making money. He even made a comeback and made, I think, 3 movies before he passed away. One of them was Blood Feast 2 he directed. Unfortunately, he didn't get to edit that. He told me he wasn't happy with the editing. He said the timing was off. And I don't know, it must be something he saw that I didn't notice it. Probably have to go and watch it again, but he just didn't think too much of the editing on Blood Feast 2. So anyway, he made Nudie Cuties. He later went and tried to get away from that because everybody started copying him. And Herschell did what you're supposed to do. You have a lot of these sissy independent filmmakers that try to copy what Hollywood is doing. Herschell was trying to do things Hollywood wouldn't have the guts to do, that they couldn't make, films they couldn't make or wouldn't dare make. And so that's when he started making the Nudie Cuties. The thing is, every independent filmmaker started making Nudie Cuties after Herschell did. Everybody was going to Florida to nudist camps, or California, or wherever warm climate had lots of naked babes. So Herschell said, okay, that's enough of that. Let's do something they wouldn't dare make. Because he said that he was actually responsible for breeding his own competition. So he and Dave Friedman got together, made up a list of forbidden subjects. And one of them was gruesome, graphic gore. That's right, gruesome, graphic gore. Beautiful, beautiful, absolutely beautiful. So there we go. Herschell and Dave got together and decided to make some of the most gruesome movies ever made. They're still more gruesome than the boring shit that comes out of Hollywood now. You know, Hollywood makes some really boring crap, and some of these are body count movies with very little blood or minimum blood. And you know, as a matter of fact, to be honest with you, I think some of the stuff I seen on Netflix, my wife had when she was still around, she checked out a vampire TV series called True Blood, and that was bloodier than some of the R-rated horror films they have out now. And so, you know, however, Herschell really went to town on this. But the thing is, not only was Herschell's films gruesome and gory, they had a morbid sense of humor I really appreciated, sort of like Addams Family / Munsters type of what they call gallows humor. And this made the movie more entertaining to watch. And a lot of horror movies now use this horrible gray filters to make it look sort of metallic and almost black and whitish, and it's almost hard to see stuff. It's always dark. It's like, you know, it's really crappy filmmaker. Herschell had no problem with color. As a matter of fact, his movie posters scream about how great the color in his films are. 1963, this is only 3 years after Psycho came out, and, you know, it was in black and white, and they were so worried about this. Herschell didn't worry about shit. He unleashed that film and freaked everybody out. He didn't have to fucking answer to anybody. He said, oh, the hell with that, we're putting this out. It did cause a lot of people to freak out, you know, and condemn the movie and all this other shit because, of course, you know, hey, you know. So, I mean, people just didn't know what to expect when they saw that. They said, my God, what the hell? You know? I mean, the first scene in Blood Feast, before the credits even come out, this girl is in the bathtub. This killer comes in, stabs her in the eyeball, and then cuts off her leg, puts it in a sack, and runs away. And you see, you know, girl in the bathtub, missing a leg, blood everywhere. And it's in, like they said, in blood splatter color. And he was not kidding. The color that Herschell used, first of all, that's where most of the budget went. It went on color film and lots of blood. And it is absolutely amazing. It's just the color, and if you catch the DVDs, the films have been restored beautifully, and you're like, oh my God, no dark lighting. The lighting is bright, the colors are bright, it looks, you know, and it's a little bit, I wouldn't say slice of life, but you know what, all the locations are real. They were not shot in studios, they were shot in people's homes and stuff. And when I say stuff, I mean stuff like swimming pools, not a set, somebody's real swimming pool in the backyard that let Herschell film there and film girls in bikinis. You know, if Herschell needed hey, you know, I need a restaurant. Okay, he got a real restaurant. He went there, got permission from the owners, you know, paid them off, blah blah. There you go. And so what you're seeing is a lot of real locations from the early 60s to the early 70s. And just you know, you're getting to see a lot of stuff there. And, you know, he didn't, you know, with a few exceptions, he didn't provide wardrobe unless he knew you were going to get bloody, you know, so there you go. And, you know, terrific stuff. His partner, Dave Friedman, produced the first 3 bloody horror films, Blood Feast, Color Me, the second one was 2000 Maniacs, and Color Me Blood Red. All 3 great movies, which I recommend. And I had the privilege of meeting Herschell Gordon Lewis, and not only meeting him, corresponding with him in email, and I met him 3 times, and I met Dave Friedman at Chiller Theater, And I met Herschell at Chiller Theater. I met Herschell at Chiller Theater in the 1990s, and I got an autograph. He autographed. They made a Blood Feast comic. I had that autographed, and I shook his hand and I said, "Mr. Lewis, I'd like to tell you, you inspired me to make films. I'm making films because of you." And he said, he held his head together. Of course, he was joking, but he grabbed his head and said, "Oh my God, another life I ruined." Well, I'm sure he was kidding. I hope. Anyway, so that was the first time I met Herschell. And I would meet him again later in early 21st century, 2000, I think it was. They showed 2000 Maniacs at the Benji's Drive-In. They had a nice, beautiful 35 millimeter print, and it was just absolutely amazing. And they showed it at the Benji's, and Herschell was there. And by the way, Herschell sings the theme song to 2000 Maniacs. Not because Herschell wanted to be immortalized, but because no one would sing it the way he wanted it sung. And then somebody said to him, "Herschell, you should sing it." And so he did. And he saved himself money. So that was another reason why he did that. And he composed the song. So Herschell wrote a lot of the music because he didn't want to have to pay anybody else for rights or royalties. So I met Herschell there, and with my friend L.W. Woods. Now, you may know her in my films as Madame Magnum, and she also played the Lady Coroner in a few of our Harry Gross movies. So L.W. was with me, and she had a very puzzling question, because in Blood Feast, those of you who've seen it, if you haven't, you should. It's required viewing if you're an underground filmmaker. In Blood Feast, the depraved maniac worshipped a blood goddess named Ishtar, who was a Babylonian goddess. However, she's misidentified in Blood Feast as being Egyptian. And yes, this is actually important if you're a history buff. You know, Egypt and Babylonian had different cultures. I mean, there were some similarities. For the most part, really, they're different. Okay, let's all come to the party and admit it. I mean, you know, it's some people get them confused, but really, if you take a close look at them, they're different cultures. Okay, so anyway, Ishtar, by the way, is the villainous goddess in the story of Gilgamesh, if you want to look that up. But anyway, and she was a blood goddess, by the way. So Herschell, it's amazing that Herschell, a professor of literature, you know, would get that wrong, or did he? He probably thought that people would be more familiar with Egyptian motifs than, than Babylonian stuff. I talked to David Friedman about it, and he said, well, you know, we were on an airplane doing the outline, and it's not like now you got your telephone that hooks up to the internet and you can do research right away. You know, this is early 1960s, man. There is no internet except maybe for the military. And I think that wasn't even called the internet at the time. I think it was called something else, but I don't even know if they had started building it yet. But so anyway, Dave, that's what Dave said. They said, you know, we didn't have time to research that. We were just excited about the story and the plot and everything. So when we were at the Benji's Drive-In, which is located in Maryland, and you should look it up and check it out if you're in Maryland. It's great. It's still there. Unfortunately, they don't show too many B movies. They have to make money, so they show family movies there most of the part. But if you should call up and see if there's something you want to see. The last movie I saw there was the first Iron Man movie, and it was great, and on the big screen. And that's probably, like I said, there's a superhero movie, one of those superhero movies, you may want to check them out at the Benji's if you still want to go to the theater. drive-ins are better than, the theaters indoors where people are, because you're in your car. You don't have to put up with people and talking on the phone and all. They want to talk on the phone, they talk on the phone in their damn car. But anyway, I digress. So, like I said, the Benjis was having a special showing of 2000 Maniacs. And Lola asked a question to Herschell Gordon Lewis, and they had posters there that you could have autographed. I took my book. There's a biography about Herschell that I recommend. It's out of print, but if you can find a used copy, I recommend it. It's called The Amazing Herschell Gordon Lewis and His World of Exploitation Films. If you can find it, I recommend it. It's great stuff, and you should get it. Now, LW asked Herschell, she said, I have a question, Mr. Lewis. Why did you have the goddess Ishtar, why was she identified as being Egyptian when you must have known that she was a Babylonian goddess? And Herschell was stunned, and a lot of people in the back and giggled, and he said, there's an intellectual in every crowd. And then he said, let me tell you, young lady, in the 30 years since I made that movie, no one has ever asked me that question. You're the first person to ask me that question, and for that, I salute you. And he actually wrote that down on the poster that LW got autographed. So there you go. And of course, I met him, and I met him again. That was my second time meeting him. Shook his hand. I said we met at Chiller, and I told him what he said, and then he actually remembered that, which was amazing. He says, "Yes, I do remember you. Yes," and I had him autograph the book. And little did I know. Now, like I said, this guy's my idol. Never thought I'd meet him twice. I ended up meeting him a third time. I'll tell you how that happened. There's this wonderful lady named Chainsaw Sally. Not her real name, of course. But Chainsaw Sally is a horror hostess on the internet. And she had her own internet show. I don't know if she still does, but she is really cool. And she would also host movie at horror conventions. And her husband made a movie with her character called Chainsaw Sally. And where she chainsaws people who really deserve it. She's the heroine or anti-heroine, if you will, that goes around chopping up people who have it coming with a chainsaw. Well, lo and behold, they said, "Hey, Rock, because we really like your movies. And we want you to make a cameo in Chainsaw Sally, and we got a surprise for you." The surprise was that I was making the cameo with my idol, Herschell Gordon Lewis. We're both in Chainsaw Sally. By the way, that's a great movie, and you should check that out. That's an excellent movie. And so, yeah, Herschell plays a guy named Mr. Gordon, who has a hardware store where shady characters, which includes me, come in there and buy really weird stuff, which could be used for performing murders. Chainsaw Sally gets her chainsaws there, and I go there, and I buy a machete, and I walk out looking very suspicious. So it was great to sit there and talk to Herschell again, and he was a terrific guy. Has some great stories to tell. And after you watch his movies on DVD, you're definitely going to want to watch it again with the running commentary from him. Sometimes him and his partner Dave are there, and that was great. And I got to meet Dave also. I met Dave at Chiller also. We used to talk to each other. The great thing about David Friedman and Herschell Gordon Lewis, both of these guys, let me tell you about them. They love the fans. They're very approachable. They both passed away, unfortunately. And they just are genuine guys. There's nothing stuck up about them. I mean, and these are guys who made a pretty good fortune for themselves making independent films. David went more naughty and made the softcore nudie films and sex exploitation films of the 60s, including The Erotic Adventures of Zorro, which, by the way, I highly recommend that too. If you're very naughty like me, you'll love that movie. And it's got old school girls in it with curves, none of these bony broads. Yeah. So, and then it's very funny too, because David and Herschell had a very cool sense of humor. And what was great about it is, and I tried never to intrude on them, I had both of their emails. and I used to email Dave. I got him a copy of Mummy of Gorgor and Hard Boiled Heroes, and he praised them and sent me a wonderful letter, which I have framed, praising Mummy of Gorgor, saying it should become a cult classic. And he said Hard Boiled Heroes was terrific. He thought that was a great afternoon of entertainment. That made me very proud, that one of my idols watched these movies and says something. By the way, when I talked to Herschell again when we were on the set of Chainsaw Sally, he said something that was really fantastic that also made me proud. And I told LW about it, and LW was just amazing. She was just stunned by it. And I said, well, last time I saw you, Herschell, you were talking about Blood Feast 2, and remember my friend LW asked you the question about why Ishtar was, mistaken for a Egyptian goddess when she was Babylonian. And Herschell laughed and said, I want you to tell your friend that she changed the course of destiny. And sure enough, that became a plot point of Blood Feast 2, where they said, well, where the hero's doing some research, and the secretary in the police department, he says, yeah, this Egyptian goddess named Ishtar. He goes, she's not Egyptian, she's Babylonian. Really? Why does everybody say she's Egyptian? I don't know. They always get it wrong. So, yeah, LW changed the course of destiny. So when you see the Blood Feast 2, you'll know that was Madame Magnum who did that. So that's pretty funny. And it's great. And it's like I said, I'm really, and then Dave must have really liked Mummy of Gorgor, because there was because of Mummy of Gorgor, we used the evil goddess Ishtar in Mummy of Gorgor also, because like I said, she really was a Babylonian blood goddess, and where the villain says, oh my God, I mean Ishtar, and he actually took that line and used it in Blood Feast 2, where the villain falls or something and says, oh my God, oh my Ishtar, and that was great. It's like, man, I can't believe my idols influenced me, and now I sort of influence them. Very little, not as much as they influenced me, but enough. And it's nice to meet your idols and know that your idols are actually nice guys, and they always had time to talk to me, and I would email them back and forth, and I would always wish Herschell a happy birthday, and that was cool stuff. And glad that I knew them, and I'm glad I met them, I'm glad I knew them, and I'm glad I had the experience of meeting Herschell 3 times, chatting with him, having my picture taken with him, being in a movie with him, and interacting with him in a movie. And I'm really glad that Dave not only wrote me a nice letter, he appeared in the DVD of Mummy of Gorgor, praising it. And yeah, that's right. If you get our DVD of Mummy of Gorgor, it's a double feature of our other movie, A Taste of Flesh. You'll see there's an extra. There's David Friedman praising Mummy of Gorgor. So there you go. Well, anyway, this wraps up this podcast.